Hello, and welcome to The Bard's Truth with your host, the Green Bard. This is episode 5.3 of the Direwolves of Winterfell, Isolated Shaggydog and Forlorn Rickon, where we'll conclude our analysis of their Warg bond in A Clash of Kings. A Clash of Kings, Brand 6. It is not until the Ironborn arrive in this chapter that Rickon seems to miss Shaggydog. But first we see Shaggy through Summer's eyes during the attack. Our direwolf themes abound, starting with the refrain that bad things happen when the children are separated from the wolves. The Ironborn attack might have been averted if they were free to roam the castle, which also reminds us of their protective instinct. They might have warned the guards in time. We see more pack behavior. Shaggy is again stealthy and following Summer's lead. We also get Summer's reminiscing about how they'd worked to try to dig their way out of the Godswood, and how Shaggy tried, in typical angry mirroring fashion, to tear the gate open with only his jaws. The evening's rain had woken 100 sleeping smells and made them ripe and strong again. Grass and thorns, blackberries broken on the ground, mud, worms, rotting leaves, a rat creeping through the bush. He caught the shaggy black scent of his brother's coat, and the sharp coppery tang of blood from the squirrel he'd killed. Other squirrels moved through the branches above, smelling of wet fur and fear, their little claws scratching at the bark. The noise had sounded something like that. That noise, of course, is the sound of the Ironborn scrabbling up the walls. His brother came sliding through the trees, moving almost as quiet as another brother he remembered dimly from long ago, the white one with the eyes of blood. This brother's eyes were pools of shadow, but the fur on the back of his neck was bristling. He had heard the sounds as well, and known they meant danger. He ran toward the sound, his brother racing beside him. The stone dens rose before them, walls slick and wet. He bared his teeth, but the man-rock took no notice. A gate loomed up, a black iron snake coiled tight about bar and post. When he crashed against it, the gate shuddered and the snake clanked and slithered and held. Through the bars he could look down the long stone burrow that ran between the walls and stony field beyond, but there was no way through. He could force his muzzle between the bars, but no more. Many a time his brother had tried to crack the black bones of the gate between his teeth, but they would not break. They had tried to dig under, but there were great flat stones beneath, half covered by earth and blown leaves. At the end of the chapter, the theme of affection returns. We are saddened by Rickon's wish for his mother and his wolf, neither of which will be granted by Theon. Upon first read, I had wondered, like Catelyn, if the wolves would soon be killed by Theon. Fortunately, that was not the case. The Iron Man who came for them was a squat, thick-bodied man with a coal-black beard that covered half his chest. He bore the boy easily enough, though he looked none too happy with the task. Rickon's bedchamber was a half-turn down the steps. The 4-year-old was cranky at being woken. "I want Mother," he said. "I want her, and Shaggydog too." So Rickon does miss his wolf. I suppose that's one positive coming out of this chapter at least. Finally, we get more pack behavior as they make their way to the yard. One of the Iron Men went before them carrying a torch, but the rain had started again and soon drowned it out. As they hurried across the yard, they could hear the direwolves howling in the Godswood. A Clash of Kings, Theon 4. We next get a mention of the wolves through Theon's chapter, while the boys are hiding in Winterfell's crypts again. Shaggydog and Summer seem to have hunted together and fed, pack behavior. Then they led Theon and Farland on a merry chase. Clearly Farland's hounds picked up their scent, but there was no way to catch the faster wolves. Theon even sees the clues that he is chasing only the direwolves, but fails to understand how the boys had tricked him. Knowing how close the boys are to the wolves, he can't fathom the long-term separation that they are in for. Fortunately, Shaggy has been established as a follower, so the wolves stayed together during this long separation from the boys. Clearly, there is also some warging going on to make this chase a reality. We know that's the case with Bran from later, but we can be less sure as to whether Rickon is warging Shaggy at this time also. He dismounted for a closer look. The kill was still fresh, and plainly the work of wolves. The dog sniffed round it eagerly, and one of the mastiffs bared his teeth in a haunch until Farland shouted him off. No part of this animal has been butchered, Theon realized. The wolves ate, but not the men. Even if Asha did not want to risk a fire, she ought to have cut them a few steaks. It made no sense to leave so much good meat to rot. "Farland, are you certain we're on the right trail?" he demanded. "Could your dogs be chasing the wrong wolves? My bitch knows the smell of Summer and Shaggy well enough." Later. "There's been only the one trail, my lord, I swear it," said Garrus defensively. "And the direwolves would never have parted from them boys. Not for long." "That's so," Theon thought. Summer and Shaggydog might have gone off to hunt, but sooner or late they would return to Bran and Rickon. "Garrus, Murch, take 4 dogs and double back. Find where we lost them. Agar, you watch them. I'll have no trickery. Farland and I will follow the direwolves. Give a blast on the horn when you pick up the trail. 2 blasts if you catch sight of the beasts themselves. Once we find where they went, they'll lead us back to their masters." A Clash of Kings, Jon 8. During the time where we the reader think Bran and Rickon are dead, Jon thinks of all the living direwolves as he ponders his own mortality. He wonders if Shaggy will howl for him when he's dead. One must wonder how Jon would even know to think this. Did Jon feel Shaggy doing this? Maybe in his dreams at some point? Or was this Ghost's thought? I imagine Ghost felt it when they howled for Lady. It wasn't on the page for us to see, though, so that is speculation. "It will be good to feel warm again, if only for a little while," he told himself, while he hacked bare branches from the trunk of a dead tree. Ghost sat on his haunches watching, silent as ever. Will he howl for me when I'm dead? As Bran's wolf howled when he fell, Jon wondered. Will Shaggydog howl, far off in Winterfell, and Grey Wind and Nymeria, wherever they might be? A Clash of Kings, Bran 7. In Bran's final chapter in A Clash of Kings, as in prior chapters, we first see Shaggydog through Summer's thoughts. They are hunting. Dogs are afraid of them, recalling our theme of others fearing them. Shaggy is vicious in how he kills the horse. Still, Summer dominates him when they fight. Though the need to subdue Shaggydog is a troubling sign, is the separation from Rickon again making him more wild? Before that, though, there's a hint of Shaggy mirroring what would be Rickon's response to the carnage before them. He growls at every sound. I've never thought of Shaggy as a coward, but being spooked at everything would be appropriate if Rickon were sharing Shaggy's emotions at that time. He pricked up his ears and listened, and his brother growled at every sound. They prowled under the trees as a piney wind blew ashes and embers through the sky. In time the flames began to dwindle, and then they were gone. The sun rose gray and smoky that morning. Only then did he leave the trees, stalking slow across the fields. His brother ran with him, drawn to the smell of blood and death. They padded silent through the dens men had built of wood and grass and mud. Many and more were burned, and many and more were collapsed. Others stood as they had before, yet nowhere did they see or scent a living man. Crows blanketed the bodies and leapt into the air, screeching when his brother and he came near. The wild dogs slunk away before them. Beneath the gray cliffs a horse was dying noisily, struggling to rise on a broken leg and screaming when he fell. His brother circled around him and then tore out his throat while the horse kicked feebly and rolled his eyes. When he approached the carcass, his brother snapped at him and laid back his ears, and he cuffed him with a forepaw and bit his leg. They fought amidst the grass and dirt and falling ashes beside the dead horse, until his brother rolled on his back in submission, tail tucked low. One more bite at his upturned throat, then he fed, and let his brother feed, and licked the blood off his black fur. Bran goes on to not want to leave the wolf's skin. A possible example of the wolfish thoughts of Summer beginning to overwhelm Bran after he spent too long inside the wolf. This phenomenon is the basis for my hypothesis that Rickon could be similarly overwhelmed by Shaggydog while they are telepathically connected. Now is a good time to consider what Rickon was doing in the crypts while Bran was warging Summer. After the dream in the prior passage, there was a long scene in the crypts after Bran wakes up, but Rickon isn't even mentioned until they finally decide to go to the surface. He's an afterthought. It must have been hard for the boy to be so ignored, even with company so close around him. Like with Bran and Summer, it's probable that his bond to Shaggy increased a lot during this time. However, we don't have much information showing that he learned to control the wolf. We can, however, infer quite a bit from the next passage. In the scene, he asks if they are going to where Shaggydog is. To me, the phrasing definitely suggests that he knows where Shaggydog is, and that he just desperately wants to go there too. I wonder if he knows this because he's tracked Shaggy and Summer's adventure through Shaggydog's eyes, with their minds mingled as Warg and his mount. I think it possible, maybe even likely. "Are we going home?" Rickon said excitedly. "I want my horse, and I want apple cakes, and butter, and honey, and Shaggy. Are we going where Shaggydog is?" "Yes," Bran promised. "But you have to be quiet." Once they return to the surface, the direwolves are there immediately. Perhaps the wolves sensed what the boys were doing and came to that exact spot without being called. Or was it the scent that guided them? Or mayhaps it was the noise of Hodor clearing the entrance away. Regardless, we get the affectionate reunion between Shaggy and Rickon that we were denied earlier this volume. We almost feel like Rickon and the rest of the group have a chance to be happy and safe together again. Unfortunately, we immediately come to Earth with the realization from Jojen and Luwin that the group has to leave and split up, not to mention Luwin's death. Notice how Shaggy growls when Rickon realizes Luwin will die. This is an extreme example of mirroring. The bond is so tight that they are sharing thoughts and emotions in real time. To me, this means the bond is now so much stronger than before, and that it has certainly grown a lot during this sojourn in the crypts. Two lean, dark shapes emerged from behind the broken tower, padding slowly through the rubble. Rickon gave a happy shout of, "Shaggy!" and the black direwolf came bounding toward him. Summer advanced more slowly, rubbed his head up against Bran's arm, and licked his face. "We should go," said Jojen. "So much death will bring other wolves besides Summer and Shaggydog, and not all on 4 feet. Later. "No use," said Luwin. "I'm dying, woman." "You can't," said Rickon angrily. "No, you can't." Beside him, Shaggydog bared his teeth and growled. Later. "Listen," Luwin said to Asha. "The princes, Robb's heirs, not together. Do you hear?" The wildling woman leaned on her spear. "Aye, safer apart. But where to take them? I'd thought maybe these Serwins." In the last scene where Rickon and Shaggy are together with Bran and Summer, we see how sad the parting makes Rickon. Note the love for Hodor that we referenced earlier. We can only imagine that this further abandonment will mean repeated fear, sadness, and anger for the young boy, leading to a possible repeat of his behaviors from A Game of Thrones and earlier this volume. The obvious difference is that his bond to Shaggy is much stronger now. As a warging pair, they could be unpredictable and extremely dangerous to anyone they encounter. They are left with Asha, who will care for the boy well enough, but cannot be mistaken for one who will give him a lot of comfort and affection. Her smack with the spear in the next passage is proof enough of this. I find Rickon's capacity for explosions of rage will not be tempered by this pairing. Still, he has a loyal protector in Shaggy, who takes up his post as they leave Bran's sight, shadowing. They stopped at the kitchens first. Asha found some loaves of burned bread that were still edible, and even a cold roast fowl that she ripped in half. Mira unearthed a crock of honey and a big sack of apples. So Rickon may get his apple cakes and his honey. They didn't say anything about butter, so I guess 2 out of 3 ain't bad, eh? The passage continues. Outside they made their farewells. Rickon sobbed and clung to Hodor's leg until Asha gave him a smack with the butt end of her spear. Then he followed her quick enough. Shaggydog stalked after them. The last Bran saw of them was the direwolf's tail as it vanished behind the broken tower. So that's it for Shaggydog and Rickon in A Clash of Kings. We'll have one more video on their bond, discussing mentions of them in A Storm of Swords and A Dance with Dragons. Thanks to all the terrific artists who let me use their work on this YouTube video. Thanks especially to those in my family who helped in this series so far. If you enjoy this content, you can also consider supporting us on Patreon.